Welcome to Mythcrashers. We weren't invited to the party, but we came to talk about myths anyway.
My name is Malinda.
My name is Nicole. Today we are discussing the myth of Demeter, the goddess of fertility and the harvest, and her daughter Persephone, who takes a little trip to the underworld.
Okay, well, Demeter, our beautiful Greek goddess of fertility and agriculture, and take it away, I guess. Well, pomegranates. That's the word of the show. Pomegranates. You'll find out, guys.
You'll find out why. Here's the myth. Persephone is gathering flowers one day and sees a particularly beautiful narcissus. When she bends to pick it, the god of the underworld, Hades, bursts up through the ground in his chariot and abducts her.
Have you ever seen a narcissus?
I've never. What does it look like?
Well, that's good. Okay, well, we're a great help. Carry on.
Are they real?
Yes, they must be. We'll find out. We'll find out later. Put a pin in that. Narcissus. Right. Go. Hades bursts out the ground, back into the ground.
And then
in like a little underworld rainbow, I guess.
And Persephone cries out, but no one hears her except her mother, the goddess of magic, Hecate, and the god of the sun, Helios. Demeter is heartbroken at her daughter's abduction and begins searching for her daughter. But no one will tell her where she is until she meets with Hecate and Helios, and they work out what has happened. Demeter is even more upset. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so the sun god, they just heard it, they didn't see it. They just heard a scream, but they didn't see her. Okay. This is like a really barren field, but that's okay.
Well, there's going to be more barren fields in a minute, Malinda. Don't you worry.
Good.
Demeter is even more upset on hearing what has happened to her daughter and begins wandering around Greece in disguise in her sorrow. She arrives at Eleusis, a town near Athens. A group of sisters find her there, and she tells them she is an old woman who escaped slavery and came here in search of work. They take pity on her and invite her to come and work for their mother as a nurse for their baby brother. When Demeter enters the house, she appears tall and radiant, and the women are overwhelmed. And Demeter sits in silence in her sorrow, until an old woman makes her laugh with jokes and offers her wine to drink. What's the joke? What's the joke, Malinda, that gets Demeter woken up?
Okay. So why do the Spice Girls only like playing Street Fighter?
I don't know why.
Because Tekken is too easy. There, did it.
The women know that Demeter is a divine being, but they don't know who. And the mother offers her the job of raising the baby boy. Demeter accepts this. She tries to bestow various blessings on him, including immortality, by placing him in the fire.
In the fire?
Yep.
Okay.
But the mother... Good.
Sorry, no, that reminds me of... Okay, no, before I remind myself of what I'm reminded of, what's going to go down with this fire? What's happening with the fire?
Well, the mother sees her baby in the fire, obviously, and thinks Demeter is trying to kill him.
Obviously.
Demeter says he will now always have honor, but not be immortal, and that the men of the town will be cursed to fight with each other. And also she commands them... Yep, she commands them to build a temple for her, revealing her true form and identity as a goddess.
Did she not do this earlier when she was like radiant light, but then she was still depressed, and then she needed that absolute banger of a Spice Girls gag?
They think she's a goddess, but they don't know which one.
But now they're like, whoa, she's done the full Beauty and the Beast thing with the actually.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Okay.
So now they know who she is. Now they know who she is. The father has the temple built, and Demeter goes to live in it. At this point, Demeter stops letting the crops grow. So people begin starving and failing to make sacrifices to the other gods.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you can see where this is going.
Yeah.
Zeus tries to bring her to Olympus, the home of the gods, to discuss it, but she refuses until she's allowed to see her daughter. Zeus sends the messenger god Hermes to Hades and tells him to allow Persephone to see her mother. And Hades lets her go, but secretly feeds her pomegranate seeds before she does.
Pomegranate seeds. This is riveting. I sound sarcastic, but I am actually riveted. Go.
Have you ever been secretly fed pomegranate seeds, Malinda?
Not secretly. No, not secretly.
Have you had them not secretly?
No, actually, it's been a very long time since I last ate a pomegranate because they are beautiful, juicy, maybe not that juicy, but mainly toil, and they're encased in like a leathery kind of ball sack thing. So I'm not. They're never the top of the old 5 a day list. But maybe this story will cause me to reconsider. Hopefully, unless I found out. Hopefully, how were they secretly secreted upon her? I assume she ate them, right?
Well, she secretly ate them.
She secretly ate them.
Accidentally, it's unclear. It's unclear. I don't know how one is secretly fed. While she was sleeping, she would choke to death. Anyway, I guess she could die.
Put up her nose or something. Oh my God, pomegranates are overrated.
So mother and daughter are reunited, but Demeter tells Persephone that she has made a deal with Zeus. If Persephone has eaten nothing, she can return to live with her mother, but if she has eaten, she would have to spend 1/3 of the year in the underworld every year. As she had eaten the seeds, this is the deal.
No!
So Persephone spends 1/3 of the year in the underworld, during which time Demeter makes the earth barren, winter, and then lives with her mother the rest of the year when the crops are fruitful.
Oh man, they done did her dirty. Secretly feeding her the pomegranates. I'm thinking here, good ending, bad ending. Would you want to be sort of, I don't know, cursed and or blessed with the joy of spending 2/3 of the year with your mother? I'm not sure about this. But at the same time, Demeter was in a pretty bad place. She basically, starved the entire earth and seemed to take the whole misunderstanding about the baby quite badly.
She got herself in the situation with the baby, though.
Yes. I mean,
she didn't have to put a baby in a fire, okay?
What do you expect? I mean, Jesus. You put a baby in a fire, no one's going to see that and take it well.
Exactly.
Yeah. When I was, I remember once when I was a teenager, I put something in a fire. I spent a lot of time. No, see, it wasn't a newborn baby. It was Wheatus's first album. No, it was Wheatus's first album. I mean, I don't think it built on the promise of Teenage Dirtbag. And I like burnt little holes and made little, like a little kind of table thing by stretching the holes. I thought that made it better. So maybe that was her thinking as well.
Well, so when you did that, did Demeter come and reveal herself to you?
No, I think it's more the principle of improvement by flame. It worked for me.
Like a coal into a diamond sort of situation.
Exactly.
Babies are just like coal. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, like I say, it was all just a big misunderstanding. And maybe if Demeter had had more time to just explain that she was trying to not kill the baby, but in fact, give it the gift of immortality, it maybe wouldn't have become the big old cluster F that it did. There are many questions, I believe. There are many, many questions. I mean, I'm once again thinking about the usefulness of a sun god that can't see anything, even though it's the sun. I'm thinking about Hecate sort of just is, she's a goddess of, was it magic? Magic. She also didn't see anything, even though they appear to be the only.
I don't know why she can't make the baby immortal without the fire. Surely the goddess of magic. Any of them could have made the baby immortal without fire, and we wouldn't be in this situation. Anyway, that's all just like an offshoot of the main problem, the Demeter Persephone thing.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that. All of that, like motherhood and stuff. The perils of kidnapping. No, it's so she is. What is Demeter the goddess of?
She is the goddess of fertility and the harvest. That's
And the
why she
harvest.
controls the seasons. That's why it becomes winter when her daughter is away. I'm going to say, I'm going to give a controversial opinion, though. I like winter, so Persephone can stay in the underworld. It's fine.
Winter is hardcore in New York as well, right?
It is. I like a bit of snow.
You like a bit of snow. Yeah, doesn't the entire state get like hefto on the snow though?
Not so much on Long Island. We probably get like a foot or two every winter. It's not too bad.
Okay.
But you sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's meant to be, Demeter's time of mourning and general just sadness and mooching around the old temple. But you prefer that as a time of year.
Personally, yes. But the Greeks only had 3 seasons, is what I've discovered from this story. So it's like, I can't decide if it means like winter a third of the year, or is the third of the year autumn plus winter? I feel like our producer probably has an opinion on this.
Oh, yeah. No, I am looking forward to all of this stuff.
Would you like an interjection from an ancient historian perspective? Nobody ever wants that, but
I think it's about time that we hear from someone who actually knows what they're talking about. So yeah, let's go with that.
I guess what you want to think about is like the agricultural cycle of the year. So you have a period
because that's a hot topic.
Yeah, obviously. You want to sowing and reaping is what we're looking at here. So, and then obviously there's a period where I think, some versions of this story say that it's 6 months she spends in the underworld. And some say it's 3. But I mean, winter doesn't last 6 months in Greece, I think is the other thing to think about. Like there's not cold weather for 6 months in the Mediterranean. So you're probably looking at like 3 months where you can't plant anything, and then you're planting stuff and the stuff is growing, you're harvesting the stuff, and then the land is dead again, I guess, is how it's probably going from a ancient Greek farmer's perspective. And really, when you're relying on them rather than like Monsanto for all of your food.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very
so
true.
They get upset when they can't farm.
I think you're overestimating our knowledge, Chrissie. We don't know anything about myth, and we don't know anything about farming either.
No, do you think I sit around watching Country File or something? I know nothing about this, which is why it is so essential for us to defer to somebody with a brain in this subject. I also have done research. All right, then no applause, but that's fine. And I came across some bits on the old World Wide Web that was saying that kind of Demeter was known by lots of different names. So there's like Corn Mother, Quinoa Queen, Sorghum Mummy, Wheat Mama, She of the Grain, Millet Milf, Oat Mumsy. I mean, are there any thoughts, favourites out of these? I'm a fan of Oat Mumsy. I think Oat Mumsy is definitely, I mean, I think it encapsulates both the dedication to grain and motherhood that I feel is the essence of Demeter.
But do you think Demeter is more like
Millet Milf? Yeah.
I can't think what the British equivalent is. Is she crunchy or is she traditional?
Crunchy or traditional? I need to hear more about this.
You say like quinoa queen, but is she like queen. The or all natural organic food only sort of mother, or is she
Whole Foods?
Or is she more like
I don't know. Whole Foods? She's Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Although I imagine somebody with a Whole Foods diet possibly would not benefit too much from like making the earth entirely barren. But then also there's this interesting, I guess, idea that still is very influential now, and also is kind of erring towards a scientific fact, whether it's kind of influencing behavior or actual biology, of the environment and the female body, and I guess that the environment and how it affects fertility, but also especially, I guess, the fact that the female body is cyclical in the same way that Mother Earth's body is cyclical. So could it be that she has maybe, Persephone and Demeter full-blown get, in sync and have 6-month-long periods?
They're definitely in sync. I think that's why.
Do you think this is what this is really all about? That it's just about periods? Because us women, we love to talk about menstruating. But I guess that there is very much, I guess it all kind of ties into that idea and sentiment about Mother Earth, the Earth as female. And as I say, that we, blessed as we are, have cyclical bodies that drive us mad between the ages of 13 to about 65. And maybe,
say that, Malinda.
I'll tell you when I get there. So I don't know. What does our producer think about this idea of the female cycle and the cycle of the earth, given that Demeter was both a goddess of fertility and of agriculture?
I think it's interesting because in Greek mythology, the earth herself is a goddess, Gaia, and the sky is male and lies on top of her. And that's how life is made. Yeah.
Imagine that's the series of Love Island I am in for.
So then there's all this weird stuff about how Gaia is the earth and Uranos or Uranus is the sky. Chuckle. And but then there's this whole long series of myths where they're all going to get overthrown by their son. So you might know Kronos eating his children. There's that great painting of him really tucking into one of his kids. But Uranus also thought that he was going to be overthrown by his son. So he just kept shoving all of the children back into the earth's womb, which A, sounds super uncomfortable. But B, there's this idea that underground is kind of the equivalent of a womb. So I always get caught up in this idea that Persephone is going into the womb again, but away from her mother, which is weird.
Into the womb with a man.
Yeah. Ooh.
But let's talk about Hades and Persephone then. So she is abducted, which is not the making of an ideal relationship.
It's my ideal relationship, Malinda.
Who do you want to be abducted by? Who do you want to be abducted by?
Oh no, this is going to be public.
Jeremy Irons. There, right, okay. You think of that. I've made mine massively public, so.
I mean,
but I guess it's quite interesting. Because we've kind of been talking about this story, and you and Chrissie have kind of brought to my attention that there is this kind of post-Twilighty, YA sort of world around that has kind of romanticized the story, which is quite interesting because what you tend to find a lot nowadays is a kind of re-examination, especially of fairy tales. People kind of think, Beauty and the Beast, Stockholm Syndrome, and all of the things that are problematic about The Little Mermaid and Snow White and X, Y, and Z. But it's quite interesting in this case is that there is a whole sort of avenue of literature that is doing the opposite of that and is actually romanticizing stories that clearly are somewhat leaning against the idea of a beautiful starstruck romance.
I think people are attracted to this relationship because it's he was a skater boy, she did ballet.
Oh, that's true. That's true. It's yeah. It's Save the Last Dance, innit?
Mm-hmm. He's very goth, he rules the underworld. And she's very the goddess of spring. And I had seen art. There's a webcomic called Lore Olympus. I had seen the art before I even realized what it was. So, of course, I had to do a bit of reading of it for this episode. And it's basically a webcomic retelling of the story of Persephone and Hades. But, jazzed up, bit of romance, bit of... and actually, my favorite thing about the comic is they have, like, iPhones, but instead of the apple on the back, they have pomegranates on the back.
Oh, my.
But people are definitely into the romance of it, which obviously is a bit it's not necessarily reflected in the original story.
Yes.
It is an abduction in the original story.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, there have been there are iterations, translations, adaptations of this story that suggest varying degrees from, like, for example, the abduction is in some versions known as the rape of Persephone. There are also versions that allude to Persephone sort of almost willingly eating the pomegranates. Whereas I guess that's kind of one of the broader issues that we'll end up touching upon more across all of the episodes is sometimes the tension between the context in which these myths were written and how we understand them now and how we sort of inflect a morality on them that kind of wasn't present in their original writing. Myths were not seen as anything that was meant to be reflective of any kind of morality. Whereas now, I guess we would all go, I mean, at best, we're looking at Stockholm Syndrome. Or Underworld Syndrome. I mean, I guess if Hades is James Woods, then what can you do? But it's quite, it's, say difficile. Would you agree, Chrissie? As an academic who spends a lot of time in this world, is it sometimes difficult to be able to appreciate the myths within the period and the time and the culture in which they were written without being too heavily kind of, I don't know, feminist about the whole thing?
Yeah, it's really complicated. I mean, studying the ancient world in any way is really complicated. Like, it's not a place to look and say, oh, I wish I was just like these people. Well, some people think that it is, but I disagree with those people's politics. It can be an object of interest without necessarily having to be something that you personally have to relate to or agree with. But there's also the idea of what does Eve Sedgwick call it? It's like a rehabilitation or a reparative reading or something like that. You can do a paranoid reading where you look for all of the things that are like immoral or problematic about a story. But you can also do I think it's called a reparative reading, where you sort of say, how can we find something good in this story, or how can we retell it in a way that does rehabilitate it or bring some of the, find something good in it. I guess it's also, I mean, she's working in kind of the queer theory area. So that's sort of going, how can we take a story from, for example, the ancient world that doesn't have any queer characters in it and go, can we find queerness in here? And I think you can do that too with this. And I think, whether you like the romanticizing versions of this myth or not, it's arguable that that's what some of them are doing, I think, is that they're saying, okay, well, in the original version, it's clearly not consensual, or in a context where consent isn't important, at least in that culture. In our culture where consent is important, how can we tell this story in a different way that allows us to still enjoy the story and deal with that? But yeah, it's really complicated, and I don't think there's any kind of easy answers to it.
We touched upon earlier about the idea of fertility and the environment, and there are many sort of like dystopian visions of the future that that involve diminished / non-existent / extinct fertility. Handmaid's Tale. I can think of Children of Men, the Alfonso Cuarón film. I'm trying to think if I know any others.
I think it's kind of an underlying aspect of all dystopian literature in that the children are in some way controlled, or in some way there's always not that many children, for one thing. Whether that's because they're killing each other like the Hunger Games, or because there's a reproductive reason. Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the ways that we have kind of touched upon contemporary reflections and similarities and influences in kind of creative work. Mm-hmm. And now our beautiful producer is going to introduce our guest for this episode, who's going to share with us some of her beautiful creative work that has been inspired by this myth.
Yes, so we are very happy today to be joined by SJ Brady, who is a poet and spoken word artist and theatre practitioner and many other things. And so welcome, SJ, to the podcast.
Hello.
Welcome, SJ.
Hi, SJ.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to appear on what is proving to be just a diabolical throwing around of ideas, crazy and ugh. So, Demeter and Persephone, where are you in all of this pomegranate madness?
I am actually, do you know what? My brain is currently thinking about pomegranates as an orb for a period. And and how that's all my brain is trying to process because of what you were saying earlier about the them syncing their cycles. And I thought, yeah, actually, that's pretty amazing. And then an open pomegranate is kind of like so many seeds and everything.
The yummy jewels of blood. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So where am I? When I was thinking about this story, I have decided to focus predominantly on Demeter. And I was thinking about barren land, barren fertility, and two main things, actually. The first one is the audacity of men to think that they can dictate between them what happens to anyone else. And so many cycles of violence within Greek myth, and just a complete disregard for the role of the woman. And the other thing I was thinking about was just growth and the earth cycle itself, about Mother Nature. And if you keep loading poison into something which is alive, it's going to just keep rejecting it until it eventually just kind of rejuvenates itself into its original state. It will restore factory settings and completely wipe everyone else off the face of the earth.
Just, I think that, as Chrissie was saying, the recuperative part of this myth is the story of Demeter, I think. Because Demeter, of course, was also eaten by her father, and then she almost sets out to be a better mother by, tracking her daughter across the world and trying to bring her back from the underworld. So I think that the story of motherhood here and the relationship between mother and daughter is an interesting and very modern one.
Yeah, and did you say, in the story that it does... I mean, I make it sound like I wasn't listening. I was, of course I was. But did you say that it's revealed that Zeus had made a bargain with Hades for Persephone's hand?
Yes.
Abducted hand.
Zeus has fully given away his daughter to his brother. And actually, there are versions of the myth where Zeus is like, it's not that. I think Hermes is like, it's not that bad, Demeter. It's your brother. Don't you like him? Which is a terrible situation to put a mother in, I feel.
Oh my God. So SJ, what for you kind
kind of broadly attracts you to myths as a creator?
What attracts me to myths? I love telling stories, I think, predominantly. And I feel like in so many expressions of art, that's really ultimately what people are after. They want to kind of either get lost or they want to see someone else fail because they fail in their own life. It's like a comfort and familiarity, isn't it? And like, whether they're told for like morality or for like scaremongering or whatever, it's the kind of the art of storytelling is just so ancient. And I feel like, it's so familiar. And even though, yes, about the context of understanding these myths in our modern culture, which I mean, is like virtually impossible. But I mean, you'll see from my writing as well, and plus because I've put 4 seasons in there because I didn't realize there were only 3.
That's fine.
There are 4 for us, just 3 for Persephone.
Okay, cool. There's just something really interesting about retelling stories for our cultural canon and for our society, because ultimately they're just, depictions of human behavior. Well, human and gods, obviously. I think what Persephone can often represent is a very sheltered innocence, which you have within children before they become of age. And I feel like her connection with Demeter's, she's got she has a lot of anger for, various reasons. And in the research that I was doing for this, I really enjoyed reading one version where Persephone goes out to pick the flower, but she's surrounded by nymphs because they're supposed to be guarding her. And whether that is Persephone going to pick a flower without the nymphs seeing, or it's like in our society, a child in an aisle in the supermarket and then being kidnapped. I just feel like it's such intense feelings within these stories, but I feel like retelling them and understanding them and human behavior, bad and good, is just a way for people to, it's quite cathartic. And I just really enjoy telling them from a stronger female perspective.
Does it at all, and this is like a question that you could probably jump into as well, Chrissie. I guess the nature of translation is it's never going to be free of any kind of external perspective, or at least we are kind of the product of our time. And so any kind of translation of anything, be it from a different period or a different language, is going to be, I guess, potentially, arguably, somewhat inflected with that. So when you engage with myths, is it about trying to engage with the context in which they're created? And as kind of SJ was saying, that you look at them with more of a kind of critical feminist lens. Is there ever a sense in that it's like applying a lens to something that may or may not have ever, I say be designed for that. I mean, that's kind of not exactly, I guess, the point I'm trying to make. But I think you can kind of see with my way of thinking, right?
Yeah, I think so. So I think that there's a couple of interesting things about that. I think that as historians or anyone engaging with the ancient world in a professional or not professional context, I think it's really important to acknowledge what our own perspectives and biases are. And I don't think it's actually, personally, I don't think it's actually possible to look at ancient evidence without any kind of, without considering our modern perspectives at all. We can obviously put them aside to an extent and say, well, this or that wasn't thought about in the ancient context. And so the author of the Homeric hymn to Demeter probably wasn't thinking, oh, this is a really horrible experience for Persephone, or anything like that. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But I think that when we engage from a modern perspective, I think it would actually do a disservice to the evidence from the ancient world to not bring modern perspectives that can actually reveal quite a lot of new things. And I think it was interesting about what you said about translation, because that just brought to mind one example of something which I always find really interesting, which is there's a word that's used in the Iliad, I believe, to describe Agamemnon, who is basically the king of all the Greeks, the leader of the Greek army. And the same word is used to describe Helen, who is the woman who started it all, the one who gets abducted or possibly goes willingly to Troy with Paris. Anyway, the word that's used to describe them both, when it's applied to Agamemnon, he's called dog-faced. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's meant to express that he's like sort of aggressive, I suppose, and like angry.
I get aggressive from it, but I also get hideous.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's meant as something on his appearance.
Maybe it's
more
like
of
a cute little pug face.
It could be a personality thing. But here's the interesting thing. The same word that's used to describe Helen always used to get translated slut or bitch, which is wild. Like, because there's no real pejorative sense when it's applied to Agamemnon. And yet historically translators have always assumed that when it's applied to a woman, oh, it must be that she's a slut or a bitch. And recently, like different translators have tried to not do that. And Emily Wilson, who's written a translation of the Odyssey, she's always been careful to sort of talk about how translating things in different ways, even though it might, I mean, and again, I'm sure those historical translators weren't actively thinking, oh yeah, women are all sluts, so let's translate it in this way.
We all are.
But it's just really interesting how those biases can creep in kind of unexpected ways.
I want to read the version where every time Agamemnon is spoken about, he's referred to as a slut.
And then Agamemnon, the slut of the Greek.
Keep it in because it means that it's the same word, right? Like, fine, let's just say Agamemnon the bitch.
Yes. That deserves to exist.
He was well known as a bitch. What can I say? So I believe that SJ has a reading of an original work for us. You're going to perform it live for us right here, SJ?
Yeah. I'm going to try.
It's exciting, the premiere.
Do you have a title for it?
It's called Seeds of Summer.
Ooh.
Also, when I was writing this, I was thinking a lot about the thing which people fear the most actually happening in regards to your child being taken away, or be it climate change and kind of the end of the world. And I think why we retell stories a lot of the time is where we feel like we want to be learning from what people have done before, but actually we just end up repeating things in this kind of like humongous global vicious cycle. And as humans, it feels like we just won't learn, and we're just so lazy, and we just get so consumed with our own loneliness, and then other things get forgotten, and then the earth gets abused and forgotten, and then we just feel worse for ourselves again. And so I kind of thought about that because I was thinking of autumn and winter and Demeter and her wrath of kind of, denying growth because she was looking for her daughter. But you'll hear it in the poem anyway. Seeds of Summer. Summer. What was she wearing? Please be specific. What shoes were on her feet? Can you think of any reason at all that would mean she doesn't want to come home? Any reason at all? Did you have an argument? Do you know if she was in any trouble? Does she have a boyfriend? What bag do you think she took? Is there anything missing from her bedroom? Has she ever run away before? Does she tend to behave in an alluring manner? How can she just be gone? The river told me. Sion delivered her shoe back to me, let it rise up from the current, soaking and lost. Dissolved, distraught, unable to be with grief. They didn't notice where she went. They turned around, and then she was gone. When you hear the sirens scream now, you'll know I have been here. Why did she wander away? She's just a child, ready to believe, faithfully willing to receive advice, defenseless, curious to see the beauty that lay within a flower from the earth, herself reflected in its trusting growth and leaving its life in the hands of the strong. She can't think straight. This heat, so debilitating, paralyzed by oncoming grief. Her thoughts race to limbs, to hands that grab, to teeth and tongues that succumb to their selfish sense of destruction, to blood, to death, to bruises appearing on arms and legs, to broken nails, to stifled screams, to trapped, to locked in the boot, to washed up on the shore, to daylight scenes, to no one being able to see, to no witness or words of where her daughter might be. She's still for a long time. Autumn. The days are darker. The colours are allowed to fade. The skies close over. She searches. No new life is to come from her touch. Life leaves the earth, swamped by a mother's sorrow, endlessly walking, seeking only corners of solid for solace. Daddy's had enough of this. You're being ridiculous. You gave her away. She wasn't yours to take, to dictate what happens to her life. You let her be taken away, have left her to rule over the departed. He can't just choose to take. Yeah, I gave her away. He is my brother. I told you I promised him a wife. He gets lonely, you know. I knew you would react this way. This is exactly why I didn't tell you in the first place. You are such a bunch of deathless gods. Making the mistake of assuming we are dispensable. She can't just be replaced. There are no two of the exact same. She is my daughter. She is life and death. You never change, always treating us with such disdain and disregard for our own part in this world. There is no life without me. Nothing can survive and nothing will until I find her alive. Where are you going? Winter. Earth-bound, until the ground is warm once again from her feet. I need to clear my head, to feel the solid ground beneath. Good old concrete, where no seed, shoots or leaves can find the light, only fire in the grate, only darkened charcoal afternoons and long sleeves await. She's paved over life, the people say, refusing, out of spite, to move on. This is the end of the world, they say, the final cycle. It will end beneath this frozen lake of grief. I actually feel she's being quite selfish. We lose people all the time. We are the many and have more mouths to feed, herd immunity. Why is your child's loss greater than mine? You're a goddess of fertility. You're supposed to have our backs when things turn bad. Nothing can survive without you. Funny that, isn't it? So quick to dispose, so quick to injure, and now I am here. Unless you know where she is, I suggest you leave me alone. It made no difference. She sat in her stone temple, refusing to move, an untamable raging storm of the abused. No soft edges, no release of tears to soothe the skin raw from concrete sleep. I owe them nothing. Storm and rage by all means. Let them hear you helpless and wild until they sense and give me back my child. Then life can begin again. Spring. Half asleep, a kiss on her face from the warmest of breeze. Shimmering in the distance, a mirage surely, an oasis. Summer. I stare at her mouth. I don't share with her my rage for the imprint his fingers have now made from placing those seeds inside her cheek. It won't be long now before she has to leave. But I am her mother. This is my daughter. Cocooned, held by my womb for that period of time, her first entry level to life. I cannot let her go. Interconnected by the cord that runs through the earth, above and below board. Paused, I look at my hands. Not for the first time, they have changed. I see they look old. I know in my heart that she is still alive. She must live. She has so much to learn. Is she to walk the wasteland at the gateway between life and death? She has to learn about what surrounds her. She has to learn about what life is. We seem to have entered a significant divide, I tell her, between earth, spirit, and human. One abuses the other. We must have forgotten where we've come from. I tell my child, if you treat something badly, it will behave badly. She tells me the key is understanding. You cannot have life without death. Let the cycle be, and before you know it, I will kiss you awake once again with the warmest of breeze.
That was SJ Brady performing Seeds of Summer.
That's it for this episode of Mythcrashers. Thanks for listening. Mythcrashers is a podcast from By Jove Theatre Company, presented by Nicole Savin and Malinda Smith, produced by Christine Plasto, with audio editing by Alex Burnett. We're grateful to the Open University and our supporters on Patreon for supporting this project. If you'd like to support By Jove Theatre Company and hear some behind-the-scenes clips from this podcast, go to patreon.com/byjove. You can also find us on Twitter @ByJoveTheatre, on Facebook @By Jove Theatre Company, or on our website at byjovetheatre.org.